So for my presentation, I picked How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days because it's honestly full of character stereotypes and the movie basically plays with them on purpose. I'm focusing on 3 different people from the movie and the tropes they fit in. Andy, the cool girl, Ben, the overconfident playboy, and Michelle, the emotional best friend. This movie is about Andy, who wants to write an article on all the things women supposedly do that make men run. She picks Ben to test it out on. Not realizing Ben also picked her for his own bet. He has to get a girl to fall in love with him in 10 days to land a big account at work. They're both pretending, which leads to all the dramatic, funny, and over-the-top moments. A trope is basically a pattern or type of character we see over and over again in movies. They are familiar and we recognize them fast. Sometimes they're fun and harmless, but sometimes they can reinforce stereotypes. Andy totally fits the cool girl stereotype at the beginning of the movie. She's pretty, confident, and acts super chill. She's like all the stuff guys think is cool, and she never seems to care too much. One example is when Ben brings her to the Knicks game. She jumps right in. She knows what's going on. She's cheering and she fits right in with his friends. That's exactly how the cool girl trope works. She's fun, easygoing, and doesn't make things complicated. Another example is when she hangs out with Ben and his guys. She jokes around with them and seems completely comfortable. The movie really leans into the perfect, effortless girl fantasy. But the funny part is when she purposely switches into her clingy girlfriend act for the article, that's when the movie is basically making fun of the cool girl trope. For example, the love fern scene, she brings a giant plant into his apartment and accuses him of killing their relationship fern. It's dramatic on purpose. It shows how the pressure to be the perfect chill girlfriend is ridiculous. Another moment is when she crashes his poker night. She cries, interrupts the game, and brings weird snacks. It's exaggerated, but it highlights how unrealistic the cool girlfriend expectation really is. Ben is your typical rom-com guy at first, confident, kind of cocky, and totally convinced he can charm any woman. His whole plot starts because he bets he can get Andy to fall for him, which is such a classic player move. One example is the scene in The Office where he says he can make literally any woman fall in love with him in 10 days. He's so sure of himself. Another moment is their first date. He's smooth, flirty, and acting like he's totally in control. This is the classic playboy who thinks he's got love figured out. But the funny part is that Andy's craziness totally throws him off. For example, when she brings home the little dog, you can literally see him panic, even though he's trying so hard to look calm and charming. In the couple's therapy scene, he looks completely lost. This is where the movie shows him actually becoming vulnerable instead of the confident guy who thinks he can win any woman. Michelle is the classic rom-com best friend who's going through a meltdown. She's sensitive, she cries a lot, and she struggles with relationships. Movies love using this character type for comedy. One example is when she's crying in the office after her breakup. She's completely overwhelmed, and her coworkers act like she's too emotional to function. Another example is when she tells Andy and Jenny how guys keep breaking up with her because she gets attached too fast. It feeds into the stereotype that emotional women scare men away. Even though Michelle is used for comedy, the movie also shows that she's not actually crazy, she's just heartbroken. And Andy and Jenny support her instead of judging her. It kind of calls out the idea that women aren't allowed to show their emotions without being labeled as clingy or too much. So the movie uses the trope, but it also points out how unfair it is. When you look at these three tropes together, the movie is basically showing how both men and women get boxed into certain roles. Women have to be fun, cute, and chill, but also emotional at the right times. Men have to be confident, smooth, and never vulnerable. Real relationships don't work that way. The movie exaggerates all of this to make it blatantly obvious. In the end, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days uses tropes for humor, but also exposes how unrealistic these expectations are. Once the characters finally stop performing these stereotypes, they actually connect.